Hello to my wonderful online community. I love you so much. Thank you for tuning in today to another edition of my interview series. Don't I always have amazing guests? Well, I'm going to introduce to some and allow some of you that already know her to say, wow, there she is. Who am I talking about? I'm talking about the Honorable Judge Karen Ackerson Goff. Let me read her bio really quickly because it's so important that you get a sense of how amazing this woman is, how she has turned her pain into purpose. Karen is definitely a woman of faith. Oh, we prayed before we got started today. She is the wife of Will. She's a mother of two adult sons, just like myself, Sean and Brandon. And we bless Brandon's spirit, proud veteran of the U.S. Air Force. And oh, we got that in common. We've both experienced the grief and the pain of losing one of our sons. She's the minister of the gospel of Jesus Christ. I'm also an ordained minister. She's a master mentor teacher. Come on, somebody. You see the alignment here? Now, I'm not a judge, but she is a judge with the Superior Court in Los Angeles. She's an author, just like me, and she's an inspirational innovator. So no wonder she was referred to me. This is so exciting to be with Karen today because her childhood journey centers in the Los Angeles area where she graduated from high school and was emancipated from the foster care system before attending college, law school, and practicing as a criminal defense and civil rights attorney for 18 years before her appointment as a judge in 2010. Karen is called to preside over treatment courts. I was curious about that. And this is where she leads teams of professionals using restorative and social justice models. Her mandate is to offer rehabilitative solutions to criminal defendants that have experienced trauma from mental illness, drug addiction, chronic homelessness, sexual exploitation, former foster youth care, and veterans. Now, guess what? Our sister has experienced all of those as a child and as a young adult. So, isn't it amazing to know that Karen has written a book? Her greatest joy is to elevate others by using her anointed and prophetic voice audibly and in writing. And as an author of Courting with Chance, Reconciling Memoirs, the co founder of Abba's Love Notes Ministry, and a mentor teacher, our dear sister Karen has shined and continues to shine Jesus' light of hope throughout the world to encourage and empower the disheartened, the disenchanted, the disenfranchised, and the healing continues. Thank you so much for being a part of my series today, dear Sister Karen, Honorable Judge.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I am really grateful to be here. And yes, please just call me Karen because Judge is my day job. That's not my main ministry. So thank you for that.
Amen. Well, I definitely want to show you respect for all of the different platforms and hats that you wear. And I'm so excited that you were referred to me because people know that I love talking to women like you that are so anointed, so passionate about helping the disenfranchised. I don't know if you know it, but I do have a ministry, a 501c3 called Women on the Grow. And it is our mandate to be a blessing to women experiencing hardships and dealing with some of the issues that I understand you've dealt with as a child and as a young adult. Can you speak to that, Karen?
Absolutely. Absolutely. First of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. I have heard of Women on the Grow, and I've seen you share before. And so I know that the Lord has sewn our hearts together for such a time as this. So, having the opportunity to work in an environment now where I get to go back and look at where God has brought me from is amazing. And it did not fully click until about 3-4 years into my work. And basically what happened was, the day that I realized he placed me here on this bench and led me here specifically for this population. And so when I was a child, I grew up with a lot of lack, single mother, having been the youngest of 7 children. And I was at 5 years old when my parents divorced. A judge gave my father my 4 brothers and my mother my 2 sisters and I. My mother, unfortunately, with all that wonderful things about her, she did battle mental illness. And when you live with someone who battles mental illness, your life is directed by the chaos. And in so many ways, my sisters and I endured that as a part of our life. We lived in 23 homes, went to 10 schools, and just had a lot of unsettledness. I was introduced to drugs at 9 years old, and lived through and had to figure out ways to manage and to protect my own life because of the lack of supervision and the lack of having someone who had the ability to really support and protect daughters. And so having, been a victim of molestation and rape, the Lord saw fit to use those experiences in such a way as to lead me toward the bench. So I had many dealings with judges along the way, by the way, which now I look back and see were light posts, right? And so that's basically it. At 14, the Lord, through church ministry, by the way, blessed me to meet a family who took me in, and they took me in on the strength. I came there to, it was the church mother who brought me over to help keep her house clean. And I ended up babysitting for her daughter who was in law school at the time. And so that's how the Lord brought me into the family. And at some point when my mother decided she was going to do another erratic move, they asked if I can stay there and they could continue taking care of me. And she agreed. And I did that for about another year and a half before my mother decided to change her mind, and the authorities got involved, and she accused them of kidnapping me. And so we ended up in court and before another judge, and that judge changed my life. And so I owe it to so many people. And so I'm grateful. So that's the long short of my life.
And so at some point you made an unconscious or a conscious decision. I want to be like those people that saved me and took me out the clutches of just trauma and stress.
Absolutely. I do remember saying to the judge who made the decision to place me in foster care that I did not feel safe going back home. And if he had to place me in foster care, I promised him that I would make something of my life. I then did not know that that would include what I do now. But what I did know is all of the different times I had been in court dealing with my brothers and situations with my mother, I had always seen the judge with the black robe on. I had always seen that person as a person who had control of a courtroom and even controlled my mother, and not many folks could control my mother. And so I learned then that my mouth was powerful. I learned then that if I got education, that there was possibilities that were beyond my imagination. So God just took me on a road, and he brought all of that together at some point.
Were any of those judges females?
The very first judge that I think I saw, I believe was female. It's been so long ago, but I believe it was female because I remember saying, oh my God, she is so this, and I want one of those black robes. I just thought in my head it had to do with that black robe.
Wow. And now you have the black robe. But I mean, it's an amazing story because there are so many people that have shared the same story as yours, and they didn't recover, and they became bitter, and they never became sober, and they never were able to bounce back. So I give God all the praise and the glory, as I'm sure you do.
I can't help but give it to him, because I too recognize how different, and that is a part of how I serve him now in that capacity, is knowing that it could be me on the other side
Right.
of that custody box. It could be my brothers. It has been my brothers, it has been my sister. And so I learned that individuals who are in that place, that's a temporary place for them. And part of my job is to help them learn how to get better and not be bitter.
Now, were you deliberately assigned to preside over treatment courts? Was that intentional, or was that just like, look at God?
It's a God thing. Let me just say that, because when you get appointed as a judge, you're just told where you're going, and I remember meeting with one of my senior colleagues soon after I got appointed, and he took me to lunch to learn more about me. And I only have one story to tell. And so I shared my story, and he said, wow, with all of that, they still appointed you? And so obviously they thought they needed those skills, and obviously, God had some use for it. And so as a result of that, we started with one program, drug court, and it has now expanded into what we know now as the community collaborative court and other mental health courts.
Community collaborative courts.
Yes. And also mental health diversion. So it's different types of courts that deal with helping individuals get over trauma.
Wow. Now, we're going to try to unpack a lot of things, but before we get to the book, could you speak to someone today that is living with a secret? They don't want others to know that their family member has mental health issues. They don't even recognize that that's the issue. They're taking it personal. They think that they are broken. They think that they're a bad person. They think that they can't get out of it. They don't realize that spouse, that child, that parent is suffering from a mental illness. What would you say to that person to give them some hope and relevancy?
So first of all, I will say that I understand that pain, having, as I indicated, grew up with a mother who was challenged with mental illness. And I know it as something that was passed down from generation, because I know enough now in writing my book to learn to know history in my family. And I know others in my family who have been challenged with it. And I even had some of those challenges with my son. So I would first of all say that I speak from a place of authenticity, having dealt with that and dealt specifically with that spirit. And that's what it is. So I also want to say, yes, it is absolutely not your fault, but it is absolutely your responsibility to encourage that person to get some help, or to encourage situations where that person can receive help. And so please understand your voice and sharing that this is your reality, and knowing that the chaos that you see is not normal. Those are all a part of you assisting that person to get some help. And yes, living with secrets, that's what the enemy wants us to do. Jesus came and he yelled the good news, the gospel from the mountaintop. So one of the things I have learned, wherever there's the secrets, that's where the enemy, that's his realm. And so
that's where shame is.
Yes.
Shame becomes a stronghold. And what I have found in my encounters in my counseling is that, can I at least empower and encourage you to get some help first? Because often it is exhausting and such a struggle, and sometimes even futile, for the one that they're dealing with to get help. They're so resistant, or they're so far gone. And I have found that people, first of all, need to admit that where they are and say, I need help. I can't do this by myself. I'm tired of feeling ashamed. I'm exhausted. I'm burnt out. I'm sick. I'm questioning my sanity. I don't have a life. I don't have a social life. Would you agree that that's an approach too for someone?
And that is totally that you're right, because at the end of the day, if you recognize all of the signs and that person has no recognition of that, and that's because they don't want to admit it, or they're on drugs and they're self-medicating, and clearly
Yes.
that's not working, then what that means is you may have to, what my mother used to call, feed them with the long handle spoon to make sure you feed yourself first. So I absolutely, that is another tool in their toolbox, is really, okay, you can't control them, but you can control you. And so in that way, how is taking care of you going to eventually, in some kind of way, it will help them. But right now it's about you, because you don't want to lose your sanity, and you both in the boat together. So,
what I have found, Karen, is if there's this emotional conflict, I don't want to say my mom or my dad or my child is suffering with mental illness. I can't even say those words, because I'm supposed to honor my mother and father. I'm supposed to have this wonderful life. Maybe this means I'm a bad person. Maybe I wasn't a good parent. Maybe I wasn't a good daughter or son. And so there's this hesitancy to acknowledge it, because they're taking on this, they're dealing with this emotional conflict. I can't say anything bad about somebody I love.
And it's layers. It's absolutely layers, because that emotional conflict, it doubles down when we learn different behaviors in the church, even, because in the church, they tell you, don't bring life to it. So we think that means don't talk about it. And we have to talk about things, because the power of life and death is in the tongue. And when you bring that out of your mouth, even just to say, this is not normal, something is wrong here, that is you starting the conversation, which is really all that my book is about. It's about not hiding or letting those things hide anymore. I mean, I have found over the time that I was, before coronavirus, and I was really out speaking about my book, I left every last one of those sessions with somebody's secrets. Every time, because people, they want to tell, they don't know who's safe to tell it to, right? Because they want to get it out. We need to get it out. And mental illness is one of those spirits that will lurk and hide as long as you don't open up your mouth. So you want to shame the shame, speak it out of your mouth.
Absolutely. One of my clients just had a breakthrough the other day, and she said, Jewel, I've been going, looking for help. My family told me I needed help. And she said, after I talked to you, I realized I was so attached to what I thought my family should look like, that because I was so attached to it, I felt attacked. Ooh. When they didn't love me, when they talked about me, when they criticized me. You're too this, you're too that, and I don't like you, and I shouldn't have had you, and you're too black, and you're too loud, and you too. And so what I try to help my clients to understand is that when you're so attached to this image, this fantasy, this illusion, this expectation of what you think your family should look like, and when you realize you're not getting it, now you turn on yourself and you're like, I'm being attacked. So I'm so grateful that you've written a book, and it is entitled Courting with Chance. Now, the subtitle is Reconciling, Memoirs. And I also coach people that want to write books. And so often they say, Jewel, I'm afraid to write my memoirs because the person who caused me the most hurt is still living. And how do I write my memoir without being outcast, being judged, or being told that my truth is not my truth? Did you have that issue as you wrote your book?
Thank you for that question. Yes, I did. And a lot of it stemmed from, first of all, the reason I called it Reconciling Memoirs was because I had the great blessing of finding my mother's 96-page typewritten memoir. Yes, 9 years after she had passed. And in reading it, it just was spot on as to why and what I saw as a child, right? In terms of why things were so chaotic. And the fact that she had put this down in writing, she never had the wherewithal to put it in any other form or to move it to a book. So I knew that the blessing that I had and what I had accomplished in my life, I couldn't dare share that without honoring what she had put in writing. So I took maybe a third of that, gave the rest to my siblings so that they could feel free if they wanted to share. with that though, I did realize that I still had for some of the people who had caused me trauma, they were still alive. So one of my obligations though was to make sure the type of trauma that was caused to me, which really was, the torment and the sexual trauma, that I put it out there for other people to see signs of what that was, to protect them, because I wasn't about protecting the perpetrator, right? I was about sharing and getting that out of me, first of all. Secondly, I understood those individuals were still alive. And so there are ways that you can write things so that you're not affecting their privacy, but you are still sharing your truth and you're getting it out there.
Now,
and
when
so
did you write the book, Karen?
I wrote the book. The book was published April of 2015. It was published April 1st. And believe it or not, my son passed April 27th. So 26 days later. And I, it's one of those things I know in so many ways. It was what the enemy tries to do, is hit you, because he sees that you're on a road. But that hit was, was a blip on the screen, because I know that was my life assignment. And I know that my son is, in such a better place. And I have to be grateful that God has given me a way now, particularly with my new work with my court, to now use Brandon's full expression in a way that is still impacting people's lives.
Well, the reason I asked that, because I was wondering, did you feel any relief? Did you feel any type of healing to another level because you wrote the book?
Oh,
how was it for you? Was it just for you to offering for others, or did it also bless you?
No, it was a double blessing, because in so many ways I am similar to that person that you shared that did not share a lot. And part of it was, as I, although, climbing the corporate ladder, or however you want to say that, I learned that people, they fear you if they hear so enough of your story, right? And so for so long, I didn't tell anybody, and I would be in these spaces and people would be talking about this situation, that, and I'd listen and say, wow, if they knew I'm sitting next to them, I was one of those,
Right. That's why I say you don't look like what you've been through. But
Amen.
I'm so grateful that we're living in a time where people are more vulnerable, are more transparent. And it's such a blessing that you took the time to share with me your story. I'm curious, in reading your mother's 96-page typewritten journal, can you tell me one piece that you can pull out of that you had an aha moment? You said, oh my God, no wonder oh, my poor mom. Was there anything that was revealed in her story that gave you some clarity?
Yes. I would say the fact that her family was decimated from her mother's mental illness. It literally, and her mother's mental illness manifested most when her mother and father divorced. And so that caused her mother to be in a mental institution. And her father ended up remarrying, and they didn't have any money, such lack. And so literally the family was decimated in so many ways. And it reminded me of what happened when my mother and father divorced, and her coping mechanisms. And even though my mother was smart, she had gone to school for journalism and really had some opportunities, she couldn't cope with that type of loss, and she shut down. So that challenged me to make sure that I, as I went through my divorce, right? And things happened in my life, to make sure I did my self-care and make sure I kept in front of me what was planned for my life and didn't ponder on the predicament of my life at that time. So it was all of those things along the way. And going back and seeing that made me realize, oh, okay, the enemy will use your vulnerability, and he sees right when you're vulnerable, and that's when he'll come in and attack. So I had to deal with that from a spiritual place. I had to deal with it from a physical place and an emotional place.
Well, again, I'm realizing a lot of synchronicity in our lives, because when my parents divorced at 7, it was my first introduction to trauma. And I became an adult child. We have this thing now called parentification, where children grow up fast and they never experience their childhood. And I know that now because of my studies and because of my line of work. But I realized that because of the trauma of the divorce, my spirit made a conscious decision that I wanted to be of help. I wanted to be a part of the solution, that I was not going to let that take me out. But it's still, a lot of things would trigger that trauma every once in a while. If I hear somebody having a divorce, if I hear somebody's family breaking up, I'm triggered, because it's like, oh no, not another family. It was so devastating to me at 7 years old. And so I know now that that was kind of like the genesis or the springboard of me, the motivation of me wanting to help. I didn't know how it was going to manifest. I didn't know that it would manifest into being a speaker and an author of 9 books and counseling and life coaching. It's because of that empathetic impulse that you and I have. It did not die. We have this empathy rather than being self-destructive. It's like, I know that pain and I want to be a part of the solution. I don't know everything. I can't fix it all, but we can recognize it and we can feel it. And I would ask you, Karen, even though you've written a book and you're doing a lot of things, are you aware when you are triggered, either from the rape or from the foster care or living in 23 different homes or seeing your mother with erratic behavior? Do you recognize when you were triggered by something?
So I had an experience many years ago when I worked for the Department of Justice, where I was dealing with a case with the client, and there was a discussion that took place about, a foster care child who had been violated and whether that child deserved the recompense. And I got triggered. And I remember, in an email reading the riot act to my client, because it was, how dare you, because, and I didn't realize until I went back and read the email and had the discussion with my boss about it. It was like, he's like, you might want to, write that email and sleep on it and then come back. Because so it was that experience that taught me about my own self-triggering. So I'm very conscientious of that now. And I haven't had any of those experiences since then on the bench, but I can tell you there are times that, and we're taught, if you need to take a break, call a recess. You got authority, call the recess, do a woo-saw, and then come back at it. And so I've learned to use all of those skills along the way, because those triggers are real, right?
Yes. I'm glad we could talk about it, because I know somebody's watching this and they may think, oh, look at them, they've done the work and they're healed and they've moved on. And we need to recognize that certain smells, sounds, conversations, movies, anything can trigger us, and to know that there's nothing wrong with you. But we want to give you the tools, and I'm sure your book will do that. On another topic, because I'm realizing we also are kindred spirits in the fact that we are 2 mothers. No parent wants to bury their child. How old was your son?
So Brandon was 1 month and 2 weeks shy of 21.
Oh, mine was 38. And I now have an outreach where a week doesn't go by that I'm praying and ministering to women in grief. And that's one reason why I started my 501c3, because I don't want people being burdened with, I can't afford you and I don't have the money. We don't want to turn anybody away because of finances.
Wow.
The empathy that I have and you have, the ability to be transparent and to walk with someone and hold their hands through their grief. We didn't ask for this, Karen. I didn't sign up for this. But isn't it a blessing that we can be of service?
Yes, it's one of those fraternities or sororities that you want no parts of, right?
Not.
And you've heard of and you've seen other people in your life who've gone through that, and our hearts are there for them, not knowing that one day we would have to go through it. And when you go through it, it is a pain that nobody can feel.
There's no words. There's no words.
Exactly. But I will say that on the other side of that, because of how faithful our Lord is, there are opportunities for service that are beyond the imagination. It was when I came back to work from grief, from having that time of burying Brandon, and you're right, nobody wants to go through that, that I got a call that they had a new court they wanted me to preside over, which was the Community Collaborative Court. And when they shared, they didn't say specifically what the needs were. They said it was a court for people with special needs, and Brandon had special needs. And I literally was looking at the phone like, is this candid camera? Like, Lord, can you be that specific about, you're now going to give me the opportunity to pour into people that had similar needs to my son? And when I really found out, it was every last area that I had lived. And so he is amazing. And I'm just grateful that on my journey, a place that the enemy came to bury me, and the Lord saw fit to, seed me. That I have the ability now to share Brandon's life in new ways and new levels that I was even limited to when he was here.
Yeah, we don't know all the things that God has prepared us for. And one of my tags is, I was born for this. And when you realize that you were born on purpose for such a time as this, you don't know it as you're going along the way, but as long as you stay close to God, as long as you are constantly reaching to get better and edifying yourself, and constantly working on the people you surround yourself with, and you're constantly pouring into yourself, and you're constantly doing those things to not be bitter and not get stuck and not live a life of negativity. It's amazing how it's revealed to you. You were born for this particular assignment, but we cannot waste our oil. Everybody's not ready. And it doesn't mean that they're bad. It doesn't mean that they're stupid. They're just not ready. But those that are ready, I want to encourage them to get your book, Courting with Chance. Where can they get your book, Karen?
So Courting with Chance, Reconciling Memoirs. It's on Amazon.com. And my website is abbaslovenotes.com. That's ABBAS lovenotes.com. And of course, we know Abba means father. That's the ministry that the Lord gave me after Brandon transitioned, of how I can express his love to the world, the Lord's love to the world at that elevated place, right? Because once you buried a child, in order to survive it and then to thrive, you got to be in an elevated place, okay? And so
we're gonna have church in a minute, honey. We're gonna have church in a minute. Because my faith never became so real. The word grace never became so real until I experienced that. And I've lost many family members, but my son, no. And there are, and 1 year after he transitioned, really, God, you want me to write a book? Really, God? So then I wrote a book, I Am Resilient, because I realized there are people that need the toolbox and the stepping stones, whether it's the loss of a job, a breast. I minister to so many people with breast cancer, the loss of a job, the loss of their home, the loss of their mind, that there are certain things we can do to have bounce back ability.
That's
to be
right.
resilient and not allow ourselves to write ourselves off and feel like God doesn't love us anymore. We all are going to deal with tragedy, loss, things that we didn't expect. Things are going to catch us on the blind side. Where did that come from? I don't deserve that. And I just love the fact that God has allowed me to minister to people and teach and provide a safe place for women to talk about those things without feeling that you're different or that God doesn't love you. No, if you're still enough and you read books like yours and mine, they'll find out that in due season, they'll find out that there was a purpose, and they can change that pain into purpose. And I am so honored, Karen. You know, we got to do this again. And when
Yes.
I have, I produce conferences and retreats. We must have you. You know, you're right here in Southern California with me, and I would love for my community, my tribe, to
Mm.
sit at your feet and study your book and hear your story. But you have given us so many nuggets today, and I thank you. I bless you. And I know that my uh, viewers today are going to go to your website, abbaslovenotes.com, and order your book. I'm going to order it myself. And I can't wait for everybody to see this amazing interview.
Amen. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. I just want to say it's been a pleasure talking with you, conversating with you this way, and meeting your audience this way. Thank you. Bless God for what you do. He has elevated you, Queen, and I'm so glad to come to know you. Psalms 42:7 says, "The deep findeth the deep." Thank
Yes.
you.
Yes. Amen. Amen. God bless you, honey.
You too. Be well.